President. Greetings, everyone. I have items 10 through 18. We start off with 10.
I do. Fellow councilors, I will be here on behalf of Commissioner LaFave. Item number 10 is a historic arrangement that we have with Tiburon Lockers to provide lockers at Clinton Square Ice Rink. On behalf of the Parks Department, and as part of this arrangement, we receive 10% of the locker rental fees.
Okay. Any questions? Item number 11, please.
Okay, item 11 is the item for which I gave you the handout, and this is to enter an agreement with the Greater Syracuse Land Bank to perform site improvements at selected blighted vacant lots for the amount of $137,500, which we allocated in the ARPA funds as part of the Urban Forest Master Plan. The purpose of this effort is to address these vacant lots that multiple departments are involved in and come to repeatedly. These are places that codes gets complaints from residents, that all of you probably get complaints from, that the police have to go to deal with public safety issues. Environmental Services is there doing illegal dumping cleanups. We're there to remove trees. They're often overgrown. They're derelict. They're just a drain on the neighborhood and not safe for people. And because we often work together on these sites, we talked about what we can do to improve the sites. And we did turn to Philadelphia to look at what they're doing there, because they've been doing this over 15 years. And that is kind of a scorched earth approach where we remove everything on site. We make it flat, grass, corners, so that it's easy to see. There's good sight lines. And then we replant with trees, but in a way that helps us keep sight lines into the future. And just the whole idea is to clean up the site, make it look better, make it easier to clean up, and to do this in high impactful areas, either where we have investment going on or just that the data tells us we got to do something here different than what we're doing now.
So I have a question, if I could.
Go ahead.
So what's the ultimate goal for these vacant lots? Are they going to be slated for building property? Are they just going to stay vacant?
The places we're studying on are places that are unlikely to be built on because of their shape, their location, the floodplains, things like that.
Okay.
I think this is a great opportunity to clean up the neighborhood. I had a chance to go to a conference in Chicago, and there was other cities that are doing the same thing, so I think we're right on target.
Last question, is there a list of the properties that you're going to be focusing?
There's not a list, but I will let Kimon speak to what our rationale is for choosing sites.
Good afternoon, Councilors. Kimon Jordan, Director of Housing and Neighborhood Planning. So first, we want to prioritize lots that are owned by the city and the land bank, and that are non-buildable by dimension conditions. So that'll include lots that have a frontage of 40 feet and a frontage of less than 40 feet and a depth of less than 100 feet, making it too small to develop. But there are other factors that we want to consider. So we bucketed them into environmental, social, and geographic factors. So environmental conditions include current tree canopy coverage on the lot, land surface temperatures, and if the lot is located within a floodplain. Social factors include tree equity scores. So American Forest put together scores where they looked at demographic factors within neighborhoods, so everything from race to income, employment, population, health, and then also population density. And it created a score based on those factors. So the higher the score, the more that neighborhood had an equitable distribution of trees. And then the last bucket is geographic. So this builds off of our ideas for R&I. We want to target as much investment in a neighborhood or in an area as possible. So we want to look at lots that have a close proximity to community assets. So that would include community centers, schools, and health centers, any public spaces that are highly activated within a neighborhood. Secondly, we want to prioritize lots that have a close proximity to transportation infrastructure. So where are our bus stops, our hubs, bus awnings? Where are people waiting for the bus and they need cooler temperatures and shade? And then lastly, we want to prioritize lots that have a close proximity to both public and private investments. So where are we investing CDBG funds, SIDA, home, ESG? Where are we putting in infill housing? And then one more, as Steve mentioned, We also want to prioritize lots that have a close proximity to SEPTED intervention. So those are lots, so SEPTED stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. Those are lots where we've gotten complaints from SPD and code enforcement. There are concerns about dumping, trash and debris, low sight lines. So as DPW and codes goes in and cleans up those lots, we want to look at others in the area that we can do the same to.
Can you repeat the acronym that you just mentioned?
Sure, SEPTED, CPTED, so Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. So any questions about the selection process?
One last question about how will this be continued after ARPA goes away, or will it be continued?
That might be a question for Michelle.
Michelle Sapansky, MBD. The overall strategy is something that's pretty embedded into how we're thinking about planning overall. So I think this particular set of funds is specific to things that we know are currently right now in the land bank property. But there's ongoing conversations with parks about how we can make sure that we're kind of aligning funding to where we see the need and what the strategy is.
I think Camone should be a little more thorough next time. I mean, this is terrific. We get calls on this all the time. And this is like actually being a comprehensive strategy. I agree with Councilor Caldwell. This is a terrific idea. And I commend you on the collaboration with the land bank, of course, so.
Now I take that these areas are within ARPA accepted areas, not all over, right? Is it, or is it all over the city?
They're ARPA funds, so yeah, we do have to align with what the ARPA regulations are. But I would say almost the vast majority of any land bank owned vacant lot that we'd be looking to do this falls within a qualified census tract, so we don't see that being a limitation.
Michelle, I just wanted the councilors to know, this is part of the master plan. That was the $5 million, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so.
Anything else?
Are we okay on item 11? We can go to
Yep.
12?
Yep, no more questions, right? Item 12.
Just wait, one more, because I'm looking at the tree plan, and we asked about the funding. So would that be able to roll into the Onondaga Earth Corps, or no?
The site work that we're going to perform?
Just the tree planting.
The tree planting, so, right, the tree planting that we would do with this would be through our regular mechanisms of tree planting. But the big lift is getting these sites in a stabilized condition, and that's what this is about. We'll continue tree planting
With Onondaga Earth Corps.
in perpetuity. They plant over half of what we plant every year, and we have no plans to change that.
Any other questions? Okay, item 12.
Okay, so items 12 through 15 are all related to a bid that Parks put out for professional services. And through the course of the committee, RFP committee meeting and making awards, 4 firms are being awarded, it's about $31,000 in change as part of this. Each, that's correct.
And that covers the whole city, I mean, based on who you assign to these companies.
It will cover a wide range of services. The 4 firms have a range of different skills. Some have more engineering and transportation skills than others. Others have maybe more wetland restoration mitigation kind of experience or landscape design. And so our parks planners will look at these 4 available firms and think about which one is most suited for the work at hand at the time.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. 16?
So 16 is enter into an agreement with Allen Associates to provide mini melt vending services at Clinton Square, and with the option of renewals.
Any questions? 17?
17 and 18 are associated with the purchase of equipment for parks maintenance needs. And as you may know, it's very difficult now to buy off of state contracts and come up with quotes because the availability of vehicles is next to zero. We're still waiting now for vehicles we ordered over 18 months ago. So how we're using this money is getting mini bids for equipment that is on a lot. Because that's where we're at with the purchase of vehicles and equipment these days.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wait,
Thank you.
Wait, there's a question.
wait. Did anyone get a list of the vehicles? Do we have a list of those vehicles? Because I don't see it. It's in there?
There is not, there was something submitted, I do believe.
If this is the correct one, Julie had mentioned if there wasn't a list when I asked her about it, because it's gonna be used throughout the.
I know, but when the
From-
vehicles, they can tell us which vehicles are that they're gonna
She
be
said it
good.
would be hard to do that because, she just said it'd be hard to do that because it's gonna be for the operational needs.
I can't say that I don't know what the specific vehicles were, but as I was saying before, we're not able to purchase these off our state contract list because the vehicles aren't there. The time it takes to build them and have them delivered is 2 years ahead of us. But if they do have specific vehicles in mind, we can get that to you.
They, in the letter, there is indication of what they're gonna use it for, but what she could not provide was the amount attached to, what they want to do it, use the vehicles for. You know, they mentioned in the letters, the utility vehicles, tractors, mowers, field maintenance equipment, and, you know, she couldn't put a dollar amount.
And I
on
get that,
specifics.
not the specific dollar amount, but at normal procedures, when we're swapping out vehicle for vehicle, we know what we're swapping out and we know what we're bringing in.
Yeah, in fairness to her, she wrote some stuff in the letter, you know.
Okay.
So they're gonna have to come back here, right, for approval on actually the individual, no. They get the 180 and they can do whatever they want.
So I agree with President Hudson, though. I mean, they should come and say, here's what we're buying, right? Not,
You're saying the list as presented in the letter is not sufficient?
yeah, the list is just like a series of things that Parks uses, but not, is it 2 mowers, is it 3? I mean, I think to approve it, we need to say, that's how we do it with all the other departments, as we'll say, police are buying 47 cars or whatever it is. It needs to be, here's what you're getting for that
And
money.
I get it about it being 2 years out, because we've been taking shortcuts with this pandemic stuff, okay? And I think we really need to know what we're purchasing and what we're giving $180,000 for. Not just a blanket, oh, this is what we use. I get that. But I need to know what we're spending $180,000 on.
Noted, I'll pass it on to the commissioner.
You can hold it.
Hold it.
Yep. Thank you.
All righty. Councilor Green.
Thank you, Madam President. We'll start with item 19, Commissioner OJ.
Hi, councilors. Number 19, we're requesting that we withdraw this item.
Is it going to be resubmitted later, or what's the?
Negotiations have hit a bit of an impasse, so the future's uncertain for this one.
Okay. Item 20.
20, in conjunction with city colleagues in neighborhood and business development, we are looking to get this lot appraised for possible disposition purposes, working with the developer of the castle down at West Colvin in South Salina. This is an adjacent parking lot that would be needed for a viable business, event business, to be located on the site.
Any questions on this?
Do we still have parking meters on that lot, or did we take them off?
That's a terrific question. I don't think we do, but I'll,
There, but I don't think they're active. It's like one post still standing.
the coin operated, the old fashioned, yeah.
Nobody uses it.
Okay.
Would we, if we were to sell it, would we have it be contingent upon the development, or how would we structure that?
We certainly would make sure that the closing occurs after the closing of every other parcel associated with it. We don't want a straggler parking lot to be out there with no use associated.
Where's this parking lot located in?
This is at
Wood
the southeast corner of Wood and South
Right,
Salina, right,
Wood Ave.
yeah, right next to the church.
Okay. Item 21 and 22 will be discussed in executive session. 23, some of it I think will be executive session, but you can tee up what you
Sure.
can here.
We are seeking to change the assessment roll finalized this past spring for two properties, 801 South Crouse Avenue and 200 Waverly Avenue. Looking to modify what was a partial exemption and would, under the requested change, become a full exemption for both properties.
And what's the use that is kind of in dispute here?
In the assessor's opinion, partial commercial uses existed on both properties. Both properties are the subject of litigation right now. So we'd have to adjourn to executive session to discuss both. But prerequisite for discontinuing the litigation would be this proposed change to the rule.
Okay. So it's something I certainly would want to discuss in executive session on Monday, in particular have a better understanding of the case law to understand what the city can do in a situation like this. So, thank you.
So just for clarity, 801, 841 South Crouse is Sheraton University, the hotel?
No, this is the block directly west of that. That includes Huntington Hall, Health Services Building, and the National Veterans Resource Center.
Oh.
And that building is the portion in question. A small portion of that building is the portion in question.
So 200 Waverly is the Veterans Building?
Shine Student Center.
Oh, it's Shine. Okay.
Shine.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, those are my questions for executive session.
Okay. Okay, and then item 24 and 25?
Two gentlemen who are incumbent long-term members of the Board of Assessment Review. We'd like to reappoint both to full terms.
Any questions on this? Okay, thank you very much.
That's
Thank
all.
you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilor Paniagua.
Oh my God, thank you. So I have item, okay, wait, I'm gonna have to use this because I do not have my glasses and I can't see. There we go. Item number 26, we held a committee meeting and discussed, do you wanna step? Thank you. And discussed this entirely. We were very satisfied with all your answers, but if you wanna recap for the rest of the counselors that weren't there, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So what we're looking to do is bring in a third-party consultant, HR Works, and have them take a look at our compensation structure, how it's currently structured, the best format going forward, and how we keep it up to date to make sure that we are competitive with not only, I mean, private sector is going to be tough, but competitive with other not-for-profits in local municipalities.
Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty, Councilor Gathers.
Thank you, Madam President. I have items 27 through 44. First item, number 27.
Good afternoon, councilors. Item 27 and 28 go together. This is our request for appropriation of $300,000 for city-owned building improvements and reconstruction. This will be mainly used at DPW. Their MEM garage is having a bunch of improvements needed. Also could be used at City Hall. We don't have specific projects outlined. For example, last year we had the problem in City Hall and funding had to be used for those improvements needed. So we're also just have an RFP out on the street for our facility assessment project that we're going to be starting. So RFP proposals are due back next week. And the idea is to do an assessment of the majority of our city-owned buildings and, find out what buildings are in most dire need of repair and then set up a capital improvement program moving forward.
Is that included in here?
No. That's separate funding.
Just gonna say, can we also get a list of what the repairs are as well?
Yeah, that'll, for this money,
Yeah.
I don't have a list of specific repairs, but I do know there's significant improvements needed at DPW, and potentially also City Hall. But it could be used for any building where we have a problem. The problem is we don't have, a full assessment of all our buildings, which is what the RFP is going to provide us in the future.
Okay. Any other questions? Item number 29.
Item 29 is a request for a waiver of competitive bid. As you know, we're building the fire training tower. We competitively bid the general construction contract and the electric contract in the spring, didn't receive any electric bids. So we broke out the electric package into a separate package and sent it to 5 vendors. We were kind of hoping we would get a bid under $35,000, which would eliminate the competitive bidding requirement. So we sent it to 5 vendors. We got 2 quotes back. One quote was for $45,366. That was Weidman Electric. The second quote was for $141,000 roughly. The other 3 vendors did not bid. So we really do need an electrical contractor to work in conjunction with our GC contractor that is currently starting work. So we're asking for a waiver of competitive bid. CNS did an estimate of the electrical work and they came out with about $45,000. So I think this is a good quote. So that's why we're asking for a waiver of competitive bid on this one.
Any questions? Item 30.
Good afternoon, Joe Awald, Water Commissioner. Item 30 is, we want to amend our capital request for vehicles. We wanted to add in a loader from our original request that was approved. We finally were able to get some pricing, and the pricing came back a little more favorable than what we were anticipating. So no change in the total dollar value, but adding another piece of equipment in there. Any questions?
Thank you.
Like your list.
Like my list? All right, perfect. Item 31 is a waiver of bidding for Safety Clean. They take care of our used waste oil collection and do our maintenance for that. Any questions? All right, item 32 is a waiver for company transportation repairs. They will do any kind of emergency repairs on our medium-sized dump trucks that we cannot do in-house. Any questions?
33.
All right, 33, waiver of competitive bid for Hunt Underwater Specialties. They do a lot of the maintenance work out in Skinny Atlas Lake. They're underwater contractors, so they do the maintenance of the cribbing screens and anything in our wet wells at the gatehouse. Any questions? And 34, I think, is the last one. It is a waiver for chlorine purchasing to JCI. The current vendor on contract can never guarantee their delivery date, and that's kind of key to maintain our disinfection. So we tend to repeatedly go back to JCI because they can guarantee their delivery. And every time we do that off a contract, we get charged an emergency delivery surcharge. So having this waiver, we can go directly to JCI and get our chlorine delivery. Yes.
So are you using the same, our Parks Department, you guys using the same chlorine or no?
I'm not sure exactly what chlorine they're using, but we buy it in large quantities. It's a 12% concentration. I'm not sure what the
I was
pools
thinking
need.
the same thing. It's different. You're talking about the chlorine for the pools.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ours has to be NSF 61 certified for drinking water. Pools does not have to be.
Okay, thank you.
Another question, how's the salt system analysis going with converting?
We are in the process of that. I actually have a meeting with the Village Just Getting Out Lists, I think it's next week, to talk about our progress. We did get a chance and submit that IMA grant application to the state, so we're waiting to hear back on that. Everything seems to be going well, going forward.
Awesome.
So does this replace the other contract with the other company, or are you just gonna have this contract just in case?
9 times out of 10, we'll probably be going through JCI because the other contractor cannot guarantee the delivery date. And we run into a few instances where we're down to a few days of storage, and we just couldn't wait any longer.
Okay, so you're no longer gonna use the other company? Okay.
Correct.
So, Commissioner, has there been any conversation between the county and you guys in terms of maybe buying a bulk and maybe saving in any way, or is that this something, or do they use a different grade of
So, you mean referring to Aqua?
yeah?
So we did have conversation with them, and I do think they purchased some of their chlorine from JCI as well. But there are only several vendors that can supply it. I think the last contract, we only had 2 bidders. It was JCI, and I forget who we're using now, but we have been in contact with them about it.
So there hasn't been any conversation of just buying a bulk and sharing in some way to save some money, maybe?
We can have that conversation, but I think it comes down to delivery. It's really the delivery concern we have. If they're buying it, on week 3 and we need it on week 4, we still have to have that delivery at that point in time. And that's where the struggle is coming in, is that delivery date, where we need it.
So I take the supply chain is still
Still having issues with truck drivers and shipping, yes. Any other questions? That's it, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 35.
Good afternoon, Ann Fordock, Deputy Commissioner of DPW. So 34 is for slurry. You'll see the amount of the 1.5, that's not actually what we're asking for. There's the difference. So it's the 26,824 increased gas costs. We all felt that all summer. They're now coming down, but it did increase the cost of slurry in a way that we had not planned on. So we're just asking for the...
I'm not trying to cut you off, but actually this year, and I understand with the gas prices, I understand with the shortages and all of that, but we've taken this has gone up considerably since the last time we've done slurry.
We've taken what?
It's gone up considerably since the last time we've done the slurry sale. It's at 1.5 million now. It was never that high, and then we're gonna add more onto it.
So I think each quadrant is a little different. I would have to look at each quadrant. I think this is one of the bigger quadrants that we do. But I would have to compare each one in the square footage and...
Find out for me.
Yeah. Surely.
So, go ahead.
Commissioner, I just wanted to make sure the council understand that you did mention that it's not the 1.5. There is going to
1.526.
Yeah, you are increasing the bond.
Gotcha.
To 26, so it is 1 point. It is this total amount.
Gotcha. The 1.5 though was already approved, and it's we're going back because there was a change. Is I guess what I was trying to illustrate.
Now the total amount that you all are approving is what's in on the agenda now. That's just want to make sure that's clear.
No, good. Thank you very much.
So obviously, we have this every year where Sutco is kind of the only one who does this locally, right? So, and you may not know this now, and that's fine, but what do other municipalities do? Does everyone use Sutco to do slurry seal? Are there other materials other municipalities do? I mean, what are the other options out there?
Well, there's the tar and stone. I'm not sure if that's the correct wording, but like some communities do that, where they oil, very similar to slurry, but then they stone it. So everybody does things a little different, but the vast majority, if not the completely 100%, they use contractors. And for our size, Sutco is the only one that can perform that service.
I do think it's something, Commissioner Gellers, we should think about, maybe a committee meeting in the future, is what are, you know, and maybe we end up deciding to keep the same route we have now, but I think the city's clearly in a position where Sutco can charge kind of whatever they choose to charge, because we're saying we're going to use them and they're the only ones who can do it. So even if we end up piecing off where one quadrant or, you know, we split up the work or do something like that, I think we want to be in a position where we have options to say, you know, if you're going to charge us too much, we're going to do something else, and we've thought it through.
Yeah, I think a session where we look at different options would never be a bad idea. So I know the I-team previously had looked at a whole bunch of options, so we may still have some of that data around.
That'd be great.
And when they do it, maybe we can look at the other option when we talked about doing it in-house, because we do have a workforce. So, I mean, why couldn't we train our workforce to be able to do the slurry? Because I'm looking at the numbers, okay? And it was 1.2. So we done went from 1.2 to 1.5 because of the gas prices? I mean, are you serious?
So, I mean,
not you.
No,
not
it's
you,
fine.
not you.
No, I'm trying to put myself in Commissioner Robinson's shoes, and he would certainly say we don't have the staff or the drivers or the mechanics. But, but you know, it's definitely, we can have a fuller discussion about it. So
Maybe if I-team can share the data with the council too, when you data to look into.
Yep.
It's not gonna matter anyway, but I've had a problem all along about Sutco, so we're gonna have a committee meeting on it, and we're gonna discuss it, because I mean, no. Because it was a promise that Pat, Counselor Hogan, and Counselor Maroon was on council when we talked to the administration about working with our employees to do a pilot, like we're piloting all of these other programs, to get our folks to be able to do the slurry seal. So let's revisit that.
Okay.
And if we go to carts, then you'll have the bodies to do it. Switching right over.
Let's see, where were we?
35 and 36.
So those are all together. So we go to 38, 39, 40 are all about salt. And so these organizations pick up salt at DPW, and we do charge them back for that. So that's SUNY Upstate, Centro, and Syracuse Housing. It probably sounds familiar. We come every year for this. And if you want me to move on, the next three are pretty much the same, but for fuel, for the same three organizations, and they come and fuel up, and we charge them back for that and keep track of it. And the last one is 44. Now, it's a similar vein, is that we're asking for more money for the sewer department so that we can pay bills. Costs have gone up due to supply shortages for all materials. And so sewers has used more money than we had planned on. And we are doing a lot more road work, which means sewers has to get in there and fix problems while we have the roads open. When water's doing work somewhere, we usually have to get in there. So we just had more expenses in sewers, and supply chain issues, increase in prices all around is the cause of that.
Any questions?
I have a question,
Yes.
not related to the items. Are you finished with those?
Absolutely.
This morning I saw one of the DPW workers was just using like a regular pickup truck, picking up garbage. Is that a thing now, or is it because they're short-staffed?
It could have been environmental services. It could have been that crew. Do you know what street they run?
Kennedy.
Kennedy. Trying to remember, Councilor Schultz, if that was that, is Kennedy over? I'm trying to think. So it could just be somebody, one of our employees just saw it and wanted to pick it up, or it could have been environmental services. They only have one packer, that crew. Okay. So sometimes they will even just bag it and leave the bags and come back and get them later.
Yeah, like it was only one guy. Like he was out the truck, putting it right in the back, moving to the next house, put it in the back. So I was just curious as to why.
But it wasn't like regular household trash.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
Interesting. I will have to inquire on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, because that sounds like it was sanitation,
Yeah.
but we have enough Packers,
Right, that's why I
so.
was confused. I'm like, what's going on? I know they're not broke already, like, we just got them.
Unless he was going back and picking up like a skipped one from like the previous day, could be. But yeah, I'd have to inquire. Thank you, though.
And I'm curious too, I have a question, and I've been letting it ride for a couple of months now. Right there where Parks at? Right down the street from Parks, and I say this because I know we all have cleanup crews. Parks has a crew, DPW, everybody has a crew. There has been a couch set across the street from Parks for about 5 months. And I didn't say anything because I figured with all the riding we do,
Somebody'd see it.
should have seen it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I
So right on
really-
Spencer Street?
Yeah.
All right.
I get tired of being a town crier, but it's been there for 6
No,
months.
no, I agree. I agree. But thank you.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilor Schultz.
Thank you, Madam President. I have item number 45, and I'm honored to ask Mr. Driscoll to come up and present. Yay.
We knew you couldn't stop seeing us.
Very odd being on the other side of the table, but honored at the same time. How's it going, counselors? Great to be before you. The item I have is the Reconnecting Communities Grant. So we're just asking for your support in this and permission to go for it. The basic concept is this grant was written and championed by both Senators Gillibrand and Schumer. So it's looking at ways to reconnect communities that were divided by infrastructure decisions. So it's kind of perfectly tailored for Syracuse. The grant that we're working on would be looking at east-west connectivity on the south side. So currently the railroad tracks in 81 prevent a lot of mobility between the south side and the university and downtown and the hub. So this would be looking at basically the first grant that we're applying for would just be a study to look at the whole situation, find out the best paths to go, where we could build up infrastructure to improve connectivity between the south side and the Centro Hub, the university, downtown in general, and then the following year we would apply for a construction grant to take that a little further.
So Joe, it says here that you will be working side by side with residents, community organizations, and of course government. But how do the residents and community organizations will come to the table? Are they going to be asked? Can they
Yeah, this grant would be tremendously focused on a process of community outreach. So we're working extensively with SHA, Blueprint 15. They're all in the conversation. But once we got the grant, we would go into the communities, do canvassing, find out what the community felt were the best ways to facilitate this.
You would reach out to community organizations that are actually in the community.
Yes, for sure. So this grant would just facilitate us the ability to go out and do a lot of extensive public outreach. That would be a big part of the grant.
So when you talk about, and then after this phase, you go into the further phase,
Mm-hmm.
so are you going to be basically pushing for more infrastructure along that corridor? Because
Yes.
I know that we talked about the sidewalks, the curbing, the different
Yes.
things that needs to take place when this all happens. So
Yep,
you're gonna
that would exactly what we'd be doing. This would just be a full study to assess it, and then the next grant would be, I believe the minimum is somewhere around 10 million. So we would be looking at doing full, all those things you're talking about, looking at sidewalks, bike paths, walking paths.
The ADAs,
Yep,
all of that. And
all
then
that
I
stuff.
want to sit down with you because you're going to take that. So when you're doing that, are you looking, because people get stuck in that specific, just that little area. There's a whole corridor down there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So are we looking at the entire corridor and not just that pocket?
Well, we'd be looking at generally, the corridor we're looking at is, I'm trying to think of all the streets. Colvin Street North.
So that whole
Yeah.
corridor is going to be swept up in there? Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, to President Hudson's point, I mean, Joe, at some point we'll have a progress report as far as housing and everything else that goes with the.
Yeah, for sure. for sure.
for the whole council.
Yeah, you guys would like to set up a meeting? Yeah.
I think we should be, because I know obviously there was some disappointment when we got turned down for the large grant.
Yeah, we're going back in for that now.
Okay.
There's
How-
the next round to reapply for it and kind of tighten up our, we were disqualified. It wasn't the lack of the strength of the grant. It was basically we were disqualified on a technicality before they even looked at the grant. So
Technicalities.
those technicalities get me out of jail a few times. No, but
I'm not going to comment.
no, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. But we've revised it, so hopefully that we'll be able to get it in there this time. So yeah, I would definitely love to do. There's, obviously a lot of this is Blueprint 15 and SHA and the work that they're doing as well. But Stephanie and I, one of the things since taking this job is really trying to make sure the city is actively involved in all the aspects that are going on with SHA and Blueprint 15. Stephanie and I are meeting like once a week to talk about the housing aspect as well. So we could talk about it from the city side and Blueprint's side. If you guys wanted to set up a committee meeting, we'd love to do that.
And are you going to actively, and I'm going to put this out here publicly, are you going to actively advocate for return of that land after the highway comes down?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's something, since, I've only, as you guys are well aware, I've only been in this job for a month or two, but already we've been exploring the legality of how the land transfer would occur and what we would need to do in order to make that happen. So that's definitely been a big priority of mine, and definitely figuring out how to make sure that's utilized in the community's interest first and foremost is at the top of our mind from the city's administration.
For the OHA, they could show you what it was utilized as before the highway went up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's our goal, is definitely to advocate for that and push for that. That's been a main focus of some of the work I've been doing.
So, few questions. Dover Coal, I assume, will be looped in with this as well?
Well, no, we would have to put it out to RFP when we do it, so it wouldn't necessarily go directly to Dover Coal. Dover Coal, is helping us in prepare for it, but this would be a separate project that would, because it's federal monies, we would have to put it out to RFP. But Dover Coal would be able to apply, and, they would obviously have the argument of their work with us before to reference, but yeah, we would have to put it out to bid in order to meet federal guidelines.
Okay, because they're with us for 2 years, so they're going to be doing similar work.
Yes.
And then the timeline of this, I know the application is due like in a few days, right?
Yeah, it would be overlapping.
Okay.
It'd be overlapping time, because our goal is to get this. There's a lot of criteria you have to meet in order to apply for a construction grant. There's a lot of big lifts to apply for that bigger grant, that $10 million grant. So a lot of the goal of this grant is to make sure we're prepared for the next cycle. So this would be going on simultaneously as Dover Coal's work.
When are the awards announced? Did they say in the grant?
No, I'd have to check. But yeah, anybody else know? Anyone in the administration know when this is announced? Early next year.
Okay, great.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Nope. We're good.
All right. Thank you, council. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Hogan.
Oh, thank you, President Hudson. I had the item 46. I am going to hold this in anticipation of some information from both the Codes Department and the Police Department.
All righty. Councilor Majok.
Thank you, Madam President. I have item 47. Anybody from the fire department? Oh, Janet Burke is going to take care of this for us, huh?
Well, actually, hi, Janet Burke, the Director of Research. I'm coming up to explain to the council that this letter that we submitted, unfortunately, was not submitted before the grant was submitted. It was an error. I apologize for that. I just wanted y'all to know. So we've asked for you to enter into an agreement rather than apply for and enter into an agreement so that we can sign the contract.
So you have the grant?
Yes, we did receive the grant, yes.
Okay.
And now I will step aside if you have questions for Chief Kisselstein or
Yes.
Chief Schaaf.
So I see here it's a shared grant, right? So what part is yours? Is it?
So we're looking for two things. We're looking for a new hostage negotiation vehicle. The vehicle that we have currently is a 1970s vehicle. It's very unreliable, doesn't start about 80% of the time, and frequently breaks down when we're using it. The hostage negotiation vehicle is like a command center. It's not intrusive. It's used so that people can communicate and de-escalate situations. That's kind of what the whole hostage negotiation team does. So they can stay out of the weather, establish phone communications or any other kind of communications that are needed. So that's one part of the grant. The second part is IT upgrade so that we can have an assessment of our IT system, see if our weaknesses are.
Any questions?
What is Stop the Bleed? Oh, that's not you, okay.
That's the fire department part.
Good afternoon, Council. Executive Chief Rick Hisselstein. We're part of the portion of the grant for the fire department is for a Stop the Bleed program. It's a nationwide program aimed at trying to stop emergency bleeds, asking the public to get trained and be able to potentially save a life, stop bleeding. We came up with this for, there's a lot of, public, emergencies that are going on with a lot of people getting injured. If bystanders could, stop emergency bleeding until trained professionals get there, it could potentially be life-saving. So this is to put classes on, free classes of 20 people, and then 20 people per class, and then a kit will come home with them. That will be like a tourniquet. There's some gauze, so gloves, some trauma shears. There'll be a marker and a card to write on there when we put a tourniquet on somebody, we need to know what time it was, so that we can try to save that limb. So there's a whole bunch of instruction. It's about an hour-and-a-half class, and we would think that we could get over 900 people trained in this with this grant.
Other questions?
On IT, and the 20,000 for IT is for both departments. Will impact both the fire and police.
I think that's just police, right?
Or just-
IT was just for the police.
Right.
Oh.
Just for the police department security.
Okay. Other questions?
When will this roll out, since you guys already have you'll be receiving the grant, but when will we actually roll the services out?
Stop the Bleed? Oh,
Yeah.
I think we've done 3 classes so far. We're putting together a program to try to go through the city safety department and train up a lot of the supervisors that are out on the road. We think that that's a very good and easy low-hanging fruit to get. Then, once we get those trained up and the other city employees, we're going out to churches and other community leaders to try to find groups that'll, we can get 20 in a group, then we'll put the class on and provide the materials afterwards.
Okay, so you're gonna go actively searching for participants. So it's not something where they have to come down to like the fire station to sign up for. You guys are gonna go out, kind of market the program?
Yes, there is a train the trainer portion of this. So anybody, John Q. Public can be trained up in this and then go and provide this training farther. So we're hoping to get enough support behind it to train more trainers, and it can take a life of its own and just continue out.
Before you leave, though,
We will let you know.
before you leave, I do remember to Stop the Bleed, and I do remember the training. So with this money, is there still going to be a cost associated to the community people now, or will this cover them?
This will cover it. This will cover for, I think we estimated around 46 classes of 20.
Okay,
Is what we can provide free without any cost.
okay.
So does this have to be used in a specific time, or can you, is it going to be based on until it runs out? Is it for 1 year, the grant, or how long is it? Janet?
Once the funds are received, we'll purchase as many kits as we can get with it, and then we will, until the funding runs out.
Until it runs out, so there's no time cap? Okay.
Yeah. Depending on how fast it takes off, it could be a year we're done with it, or it might be a little longer.
Yeah, could we make sure that folks like deaf new Americans and other, usually communities that are
We were hoping to focus on a lot of the immigrant communities,
Yeah,
and going through their respective, churches, we thought would be a good way to get groups together.
Okay. All right. Other questions?
Thank you.
Okay. That will be it, Madam President. Thank you.
Councilor Allen.
Thank you. I have items 48 through 50. Item 48 will hold for the public hearing next Tuesday, October 11th at 1 o'clock to discuss the HUD application for the home ARP plan. And then we have items 49. I'm assuming you're going to introduce it, and then I'll have Caitlin come up and just share a few words.
That's exactly what I was hoping for. So thank you, Councilor. Michael Collins, Commissioner, Neighborhood and Business Development. So this item is the funding contract that was approved in the annual budget. It is at exactly the amount approved in the annual budget. But Executive Director of the Greater Syracuse Land Bank is able to, Caitlin Wright is able to speak to any questions. Caitlin.
Caitlin Wright, I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Syracuse Land Bank. This is already in the general fund budget for this year. Usually we would be having this conversation much earlier in your fiscal year, but this is the first year that we've seen the state allocate funds for land banks in their budget. And so we were kind of waiting to see how those funds would be restricted so that we could make sure that the city funding requirements would complement. By the end of this calendar year, we will have spent down all of the ARPA funds that we have allocated for demolitions and building stabilization. And we believe that this fall, the state will be issuing an RFP for those same purposes. So hopefully that money will be flowing as of January 1st, and that'll be a seamless transition for those kinds of capital projects. So this city general fund money would complement that by covering property maintenance expenses that we couldn't pay for with the other grants. Even with these funds, we will still be running about a $480,000 deficit this year. So at the end of the calendar year, we should have enough cash on hand to cover 8 months of expenses in case of an emergency, down from 10 months this time last year. Any questions?
I have one. I'm looking here about the marketing aggressively for the 10 properties, right? Qualified owners, this one. So all we've done is 10?
10, I'm not quite sure I know what you're referring to. Okay. 10 properties that we're going to market for.
Will support a variety of activities.
This funding is going to fund primarily property maintenance expenses, but the funding contract does include a variety of other goals that the city would like us to strive for.
The variety I'm asking about, maybe NBD can answer it, because you're talking about marketing 10 properties for qualified owners under city, fire, police, and school district.
Public employee discount program.
Right.
Gotcha.
So, is it 10, is that all we've done so far is 10, or are we looking to do more?
I believe we've done more than that since the program was launched. It's been going on for quite some time. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I can email you how many we've done to date, but that's how many we strive to do each year.
Okay, so they're taking advantage of this program, city public employees?
Yeah, we've had a pretty good uptake on it. I've been pleasantly surprised.
President Hudson, I just had a school teacher buy the house right next to me, so I'm property.
Great example.
Good.
I know.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So item 50, this is an amendment to an older ordinance from 2020 that was, the ordinance at that time was for the 2020 CDBG ESG home, the plan that we submit annually every year to HUD. For councilors that were on the council at that time, you'll recall, the rest of you wouldn't have any reason to, that HUD distributed money through multiple rounds of funding for coronavirus. So there were 2 allocations of CDBG funding and 2 allocations of ESG funding that were specific to the coronavirus. So early this year, we were up against a deadline that was an impossible to meet deadline in New York State. And that was that we had to have all of the ESG money spent down, specifically the ESG CV money spent down. And you could only spend it on households that had that were about to be evicted, which with the eviction moratorium was impossible to do. So we talked with the area providers, we talked with HUD, and what the homeless providers in the area were really excited about was the idea of being able to add a medical van to the street homeless outreach that we do. We talked with HUD to see if this was a reasonable expense. HUD not only said that this is a reasonable expense, we don't know of other people in the country that are really doing this much at all, and we're beyond excited about the idea. So we are at the point now to come to you to ask for that authorization within the budget, since it was a line. This was actually multiple line item budgets, because if you look at the ordinance, it was amendment after amendment, amendment, just because of the way that HUD distributed the funds. But it's now time for us to take care of the part of you recognizing that or authorizing us to be able to make this change.
So it's
$225,000, that includes the purchase of the van and the operation of the van, which includes being able to go out more often. So they'll be able to add another day of service with the van, which will, so right now they're serving a little over 1,500 people. They are interacting with people at a rate of 1,500 times annually. That's on 2 days a week. Adding a third day will add approximately another 750 touches to people in the community that are homeless and on the street. Additionally, the county is funding a needle exchange program for In My Father's Kitchen. They will be able to do that with the van as well. So it's just an incredible time to be able to interact with people. Since it's a new thing, they're not in a position to suggest how many interactions they're going to have during that day.
Okay. And I don't question their work at all, but the $225,000 is enough for them to buy the van, equip the van, and then to keep it running for a couple of years, or is this something that will be like in their application next year?
So we'll have at least 1 year of operations within the van, since they also are receiving funding from the county that helps defray the operating costs. I will say I do need to amend the letter, clerk. I mistakenly included dental services in the van. The dental services are actually, they're identified when they are on the street. They make appointments and referrals, and then we'll transport the people that will accept the dental services to the dentist rather than it happening on the van. So clerk, I'll update the letter on that one for you.
Okay.
Commissioner, just a slightly different question, but a little bit related. Years ago, there was this idea of making sure that homelessness in our city was under control. I remember maybe a couple of councilors here years ago could remember that initiative where Syracuse wanted to be like zero homelessness. I haven't heard anything about that. How is that today?
So that was before I was here as well, Counselor. I'm familiar with it as zero veteran homeless cases. And while that's not fully the case, between the outreach that we fund as well as the work that the VA does, there's tremendous amount of opportunities for veterans to be able to receive services. One of the challenges that I am aware of, but I'm not positioned to really expand on, is that veterans that were not honorably discharged or generally discharged don't qualify for VA services. So those would be ones that would be served through In My Father's Kitchen or Rescue Mission with their outreach.
Excuse me, Counselor, I think that there's an association, Homeless Task Force. It might have a different name now. You might can get that information from.
So clerk, so the Homeless Housing Task Force and the Continuum of Care, they are actually the ones that we are required by HUD to receive the input from for building out the ESG budgets, and also coincidentally the home ARP budget that's before you as well. Okay.
We could do that. Yeah, we could schedule one. Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
What was the name of it?
All righty, Councilor Montos.
Thank you, Madam President. I have items 51 and 52 in coordination with Councilor Caldwell. Item 51 is a resolution to appoint Blondine Young to the Syracuse Public Arts Commission to fill the vacant seat created by my resignation. Blondine is the Executive Director and founder of the Black Latino Asian Artist Coalition. Her resume is provided in the book.
You just decided to quit, Councilor Manto, or what was the story?
Thought there might be a conflict there, so time for me to.
Don't worry about conflicts.
Really don't. Really don't.
Free up some of my time. She's wildly qualified. Any questions?
Well, good, then it'll be a step up, won't it?
Yeah, it will be a step up.
I'm only kidding. Thank you for your service, by the way, Councilor.
Thank you. Item 52 is a resolution memorializing a bill and supporting a bill from Assemblywoman Pamela Hunter, Bill 10525. Greg Lowe is here to talk on that.
Good afternoon, everybody. Greg Lowe, Chief Policy Officer for the city. The resolution that you're looking at is consistent, Councilor Caldwell, with the June report we made to the council on the deer management program. It is in support, it's a home rule message in support of state legislation that would establish an urban deer management program for the city of Syracuse, a pilot program. This is legislation that has been proposed, as you noted, by Assemblymember Hunter and sponsored in the Senate by Rachel May. It deals with the continuing challenges we face in the city with deer population. As you know, the council has authorized and supported 3 prior seasons of deer management work in the city. It has been conducted safely and effectively, and we are starting to see an overall decline in deer population in the city, which is a good development. However, there are pockets of the city where that is not true. And where we are seeing in pockets, we are still seeing increases in deer population, and as Councilor Caldwell is pointing out, maybe must be in one of those pockets where she observes it or constituents to you are reporting this problem. This is a big concern because I think the council is aware in its prior support of this issue. Deer represent a serious public safety and health issue for the city. We need to address the population to reduce deer motor vehicle accidents, to reduce the risk of tick-borne illness, and to reduce the impact on the local environment from overpopulation of deer. So the legislation that we're talking about is supported by the Tick and Deer Management Advisory Group that works with the city. Councilor Monto, you know that. You're a new member of that committee and have heard that group's interest in seeing this, and thank you to both of you for responding with this home rule message. I'll just wrap up by pointing out so you know the details of what the home rule message and the legislation does. The current state of environmental conservation law in New York is that any deer management activity with a firearm that occurs within 500 feet requires the written consent of any property owner in that area. That's a bar that isn't able to be met given people's different views about this matter. And so the legislation would say that within 500 feet and 250 feet, it reduces to 250 feet, written notification is required to property owners, which is appropriate and the right thing to do. Written consent would only be required within 250 feet, which opens up the possibility of additional areas for safe and effective deer management in the city. So, long description to say thank you, Councilor Monto, thank you, Councilor Caldwell, for proposing the legislation on behalf of the Tick and Deer Management Advisory Group, and if I can answer any questions, I'd be glad to.
When was the last time you did any culling?
We completed deer management work last winter, and it finished up in March. The Parks Department will be bringing resolutions and contracts before the council at its October 24th meeting to be prepared for the upcoming season, which would likely begin pending council authorization on or about December 1st of this year and continue through March again.
Can I ask you a question? Why are they waiting till December?
The deer management experts tell us that that is the ideal window of time for deer population habits. and also allows the use of nighttime periods, which is the safest time period to execute that work.
Okay, thank you.
So Senator May bring us more state money regarding any of this?
This work is funded, you might know, primarily by the county. The city receives support from the county for this. I am not anticipating there will be additional state funding for this.
It just occurred to me that
Yeah.
this is probably a statewide problem, too.
It is.
You might have a lot of support in the state.
I'll ask her.
State assembly,
Yeah.
you know?
We could certainly, if we're able to open new areas with this, additional funding will be important for us.
Do we track, another question, maybe you don't know, this is real, the deers, I think they're beautiful, but they really drive me like,
Yeah.
you know, I have like 7 that
Yep.
lives in my yard every night. So, one of the concerns is Lyme. I have a lot of people that I care about who have Lyme disease, right? And that's my biggest fear for these kids. So are they doing us tracking, like with upstate, to see how many in our region area are people coming in and getting caught with like Lyme disease? Because I see the deers, they're like overpopulated in the parks.
Yeah.
Like at nighttime and in the day, they're in daytime now. They don't, you know, they know that no one's gonna bother them, so they're just out there. So have we like did some kind of study to figure out in this population area how many people are coming through upstate?
The most effective Lyme disease tracking in ticks is being conducted by Upstate and the Thangamani Institute. And the city and the county are in discussions with Thangamani Institute right now for a data sharing agreement that would allow us access to all of the Thangamani Institute's data on ticks that are collected and tested for the presence of tick-borne illness, Lyme, and other Lyme-related diseases that are even more serious and concerning than Lyme. We're also in regular consultation with the Central New York Lyme Alliance, which is another nonprofit that is working extensively in this area. The most effective way for tracking Lyme and ticks is by looking at the actual ticks themselves, and we think getting access to that data from Upstate will help us in continuing to present to the county why funding for this work is critical. It's not a given that we will always get county funding to support this work, though it seems like in an open and shut case to us that it's a health issue and environmental issue, it should be. There's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes, and that people in the NADER, as you all know, the auditor is a member of the county's tick and deer advisory group and a member of our group. We do a lot of work to try to make sure the county is aware of the severity of the issue and the effect of the work that we're doing with county funding.
Thank you. So one more question, sorry guys, but is our objective to get rid of all the deers or just?
No. The goal is to reduce the population to a more balanced number. What we've typically suffered from is it's recommended by the experts that a deer population per square mile not exceed between 8 to 10 deer per square mile. In various parts of the city, those numbers are in excess of 50 per square mile. And the city suffered from numbers citywide that were well in excess of 20, 30 per square mile. ESF has recently done some analysis, and it shows the numbers citywide are tracking down more toward the mid-teens per square mile, still in excess, but better. But as when you shook your head originally, the reason you're seeing so much trouble where you are, and members particularly on the east side, residents on the east side are seeing it, is because in those pockets, it's 50 per square mile. We will never and are not seeking to eliminate the deer population. We want to get it to a more balanced, healthy population, which, by the way, is also healthier for the deer.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question for you, right? And maybe you can't answer it. Maybe I have to go to parks. Because with the population of deer that we have, and as everybody stated, they're everywhere.
Mhm.
They're in the parks, they're everywhere. Do we treat our parks grass?
There is not a recommended treatment of a pesticide for grass areas that can be deployed at scale to do that. So what we try to do in coordination with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Onondaga County, Parks completes tick-borne illness prevention programs to try to spread the word. I don't propose that we reach everyone, but it's the best method that we've had so far to try to spread information to residents about how to protect themselves from tick-borne illness. We don't know of a pesticide treatment that is applied at scale to eliminate ticks in grass.
Yes, it's dangerous
Greg,
for the babies.
in the areas where you have the more deer still, is it because people are they pushing back from the program and not?
No, I think the primary reason is that the current New York State Environmental Conservation Law does not allow us to successfully conduct deer management in areas where there's close proximity of homes. And in those areas that combine close proximity of home with wooded areas, they become safe haven for deer, and they bed down. And so it's very common for people in the Meadowbrook area, the Euclid area, Bradford Parkway, in some areas of the Winkworth neighborhood, to report seeing a dozen or more deer daily. One of the methods we use, I could go on all day, but one of the methods we use, thank you. I can't resist. One last thing and I'll stop. But there's good questions, Counselor.
Yes,
we conduct a deer diary program that invites city residents to submit to us on a monthly basis their daily deer sightings. And we have about a dozen people who participate. Every day there are people in the city who see at least 6 deer. There are days where I've had reports of in excess of 24 deer seen, and it is not uncommon for people, one of them sitting to my left, to report a monthly number of 65 to 85 deer noted over the course of a month. Nader does have a deer diary. Nader is the most reliable delivery of a deer diary of all of our dedicated citizens.
Add me in.
Yes, he does. He never misses a day. I have one too, by the way, in Sedgwick, and thanks to Councilor Schultz's help, we've noted, although it had subsided, we had a small number of deer in Sedgwick over the past summer. Anyway.
Thank you.
And one more question, I have to ask it. So, we know that Meadowbrook, we know that area is populated heavy. But again, as you talked about the urban areas, they move. There was a deer standing on Midland Ave. So are we bringing that community in to talk about deer management?
We conduct outreach at all of our parks to neighborhoods. We conduct deer management at sites, and I think maybe more important to try to answer your question is, where are we conducting deer management? And we conduct deer management at sites in 3 quadrants in the city. We conduct it in the west, south, and east. And so there are sites in the areas that you're speaking of that we are conducting deer management in really urban, that would impact the occasional deer we see in urban environments, very urban environments. So we are working to address the specific areas you're talking about.
Okay. Thank you, because I told Bambi to run.
So, Madam President, if everyone is on board, I would like to move this, to have all of us sponsor this if possible.
Yes, please.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All righty. And with that, I made a motion to.
So move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All righty, have a great day.
I was gonna show y'all a whole video of these.